process, but I'm happy to report that I'll be reviewing again that final batch of bills today. In general, I just want to say that I am very pleased with the outcomes of this session, especially around my top priorities, and I want to thank the legislature and their families for their sacrifice, their diligence, hard work, and the spirit of collaboration, which we've worked so hard on over the past 3.5 years. While we didn't agree on everything, we appreciate how most legislators respected the process and worked with us to find solutions to some of the most pressing challenges that are facing our state today. We will be holding some ceremonial bill signings in the coming weeks to highlight specific bills that we think deserve extra attention. It's impossible for citizens of Utah to it's impossible for me and you in the media to really understand all the bills that passed, and there are so many good ones that probably didn't get written about or didn't get much attention, and we want to make sure to highlight those. So I look forward to those to those ceremonial bill signings that will be coming up. Generally, we're excited about some of the measures that will, of course, promote housing and home ownership in our state. We will have new tools to help first-time home buyers buy a home, and incentives for municipalities and developers to build more starter homes, which is part of our goal to build 35,000 starter homes over the next 5 years in our state. I'm also grateful for the legislature's support of our holistic approach to homelessness with new funding for emergency shelters, enforcement of no camping laws, a new home court to offer treatment and alternatives to incarceration, and pathways to increase behavioral health and employment, all those things that are so important to us. The way that our team and local government officials, business leaders, philanthropists, law enforcement, we all came together with the providers to rally was truly remarkable, and I look forward to great things to come over the course of this year. On education, we again were able to see healthy increases in funding for the weighted pupil unit and more around keeping our kids safe. We're also very excited about the service initiatives that we were able to put into statute this year for high school kids and those post high school as they move into their post-secondary years. We believe that service is critical to our state, and look forward to continuing that culture we have around service in our great state. So I look forward to working with the people of Utah over the course of this year to implement the laws that were passed by the legislature, and looking on ways that we can better things for next year. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Governor, a number of cities and the Intermountain Power Project have asked you to veto Senate Bill 161, which they say could essentially amount to a state takeover of a utility in this massive power plant. What are you going to do?
So I will be signing the bill. We will, however, be working with the legislature on some things that we think could maybe be done better. And so there's a possibility of a special session to make some tweaks to the law. More than anything, we just want to make sure that we get this right. And this is something I've actually been working on for more than a decade. Something I've been deeply concerned about. We know that energy, power is very important. Anytime we're looking to close down facilities, I think we should be cautious about that. If there are opportunities to keep those facilities running, we're going to want to exhaust every possibility out there, making sure that we're complying with environmental regulations that are in place, and seeing if we can thread that needle. So we'll continue to work very closely with IPP. We'll be continuing to work closely with regulators. It's a very complicated bill, and there are lots of opportunities for us at every phase to reevaluate where we are and where that's going. Nothing is set in stone. Even with the bill, there's a very crucial study that will take place before anything happens, and that's part of what we've been talking to the legislature about, making sure that we get this study, that it's an independent study, that it gets us real information about our ability to potentially keep that facility open, and in a way that doesn't endanger any other facilities as well across the state.
So should the state take it over, though?
That remains to be seen. We don't operate plants like that, and so I think what we would be looking at is the opportunity for a third party, if one exists, that would be interested ultimately in purchasing the property.
How strong of a possibility is there of a special session, and when, and what specifically do you want to see changed?
Yeah, so we're still working through those details, but I would say there's a fairly strong possibility that we'll have a special session just for some tweaks. Nothing too monumental or serious, but that are important. We're having those conversations right now with the legislature. Not sure exactly when that would be, but sometime probably between now and July. Nothing really pressing.
Would there be other issues in that special session you'd like to see addressed?
None that we have right in front of us now, but as you know, anytime there's a potential for a special session, I'm sure we'll have lots of opportunities to evaluate some things.
Governor, there was another Wrongway crash, a terrible one, just this morning in downtown Salt Lake on I-15. What do you say to people who say, okay, the state has done this new signage and all these other measures, but it doesn't seem to be working?
Yeah. I would tell people to stop drinking and driving. And again, I don't know what happened this morning, but I can tell you with every single fatality we've had so far, there has been impairment, either drugs, alcohol, or both. And that's deeply problematic. Now, we do have some new technologies that we've employed in a couple places that seem to be working better. Give us instant notification, allow us to notify drivers that there is a wrong-way driver potentially as well. And it's very expensive technology, and so we're working with UDOT to get that deployed in as many places as we can as quickly as possible.
Other places, do you see other means in which the state could do a better job of monitoring, notifying?
Yeah, I think I just answered that question. Yes.
Governor, on the final night of the session, the legislature passed SB 273, the bill to require the Salt Lake County District Attorney to track time spent on criminal cases. Do you plan to sign or veto that bill? Or
yeah, so I'll be signing that bill. We've had conversations with the county and about the bill, and you'll also notice in that bill it does not go into effect until July of next year. So there's a very delayed implementation date. The concerns that have been brought up are around some of the policies that have been employed at the DA's office, and again, what's happening with criminals being released very quickly, charges not being followed through. That's the concern that we were hearing from the legislature. So we've had communication with the county council and some of the concerns that they have as well, to try to see if there's a better path forward. We don't want to put an unnecessary burden that doesn't actually help or solve the problem. And so I think what you'll see over the course of the year is the legislature working together with my office and the county as well to figure out what exactly is it that's the concern, and how do we get the information to solve that concern.
Governor, can we expect any vetoes on this final day of bill signing?
You can expect some vetoes. I don't have that list quite in front of me yet, but mostly there'll be vetoes around our ability to work closely with the legislature, things that don't need to be into law. I will tell you, my greatest concern with this legislative session is just the sheer number of bills. 591 is a big number. And I know everybody thinks their bill is the most important, but what happens is in a 45-day session, when I was in the legislature, getting to 500 was kind of a rarity. I mean, that's about where we were. Now we're about 100 more than that. We haven't added, an extra 20% of days to work on those bills. And I think we start to see the quality suffer a little bit. And there are just several bills that maybe started out as something substantive, but then they didn't have the support, so they removed the substantive pieces, and we end up with something that's doesn't do anything, that is kind of non-substantive. We also have bills that easily could have been implemented with just a phone call. It doesn't need to be a bill. We like to joke that we have a meeting that could have been an email. We often get bills that could have been a phone call. We work very closely with you. Just call us if you need this information. You don't have to put it in a bill. We'll give you the information. So I think you'll see some of those later today.
Name one bill that you're planning on vetoing.
I will name all of them by the end of today. So we'll just leave it there.
Governor,
with the record level of bills passed, did you have adequate time to review everything?
Yeah, I did, but it chewed into time to do anything else over the course of the 20 days. So again, my dedication is to the people of Utah and to make sure that we review every single bill, and that's what we do. And I have an incredible team who helps me with that, and they go through the bill in depth. We talk about each one of them, and so it obviously makes it harder. I'm still the governor during that time. There are other things that I have to do. It's always interesting. The legislators get done, sign a die, and they get to go on vacation. And now they're all back with their suntans. They look great, and we're still slogging away in the depths of the Capitol. And so it obviously is a challenge. It's a challenge to me and to my people. That being said, I want to be clear. There are so many great bills that were passed this session, and I don't want to sound too critical, but I think there is some self-selection that could be helpful. We could be a little more discerning about what really needs to be done. You kind of have two extremes. I was told yesterday that Congress last year passed 27 bills. I think that's the number. 27 bills to run the United States of America in one total year. And now, let me be clear. Congress is completely dysfunctional, and I think we needed more than 27 bills. But I don't know that our state needed 591 to remain functional after what I thought was a pretty good year before. We probably could have not had any of them and still gotten along pretty well.
Governor, have you had conversations with legislative leaders about maybe trying to reduce the number of bills that are proposed in future sessions?
Every year. Yes. and again, while we do have leadership in the legislative bodies, they also represent the same number of people as the other people in their body, right? The newest member of the legislature has the right to run as many bills as the most senior person there. And so I do think there is kind of a cultural piece of this that has changed, clearly has changed, and I hope that there's a way we can kind of figure that out and start to focus on the more substantive pieces and the bills that matter most.
The Olympics Future Host Commission is visiting in early April to tour facilities and make its final recommendations to the IOC of whether Salt Lake City will get the bid. At a time when so few countries see it as a smart investment to bring back the games, why do you think it's socially and financially beneficial to Utah? Yeah,
thanks, Hannah. I promise you that if every country had the infrastructure that we had, they would see it as a smart investment. The reason that some countries have decided not to do it is because they have to build all of these venues, and that's very expensive. And then the venues don't get used, and they end up getting torn down. And that's clearly a waste. It's a waste of a country's resources. It's just wasteful, I think, in general. We are so fortunate not to have that problem or that issue. We have all of the facilities now. We could host the Olympics next year if we had to, and that changes the equation for everyone. We also have tremendous public support. I think in large part because of that. These venues do get used all of the time, and we're very lucky to be the North American capital of winter sports, and that will continue. My hope is, and there's certainly been talk of this, that over the course of the next few years, that the IOC will make a decision to kind of have a set group of cities that host the Olympics, so that every 20 years, maybe or every 16, we come back to these host cities, and that Salt Lake City will be one of those. I could envision one where you have an Asian Winter Games, a European Winter Games, a North American Winter Games, and then maybe you have a new city every fourth time, something like that. And if that's the case, I think Salt Lake City would be well positioned.
Is there a social perspective perspective too? What does this do for the reputation of Utah on a global scale?
Absolutely. I think, look, if you look at the success of Utah over the last 10 years, and again, taking my bias out of it, we've been the #1 economy from a GDP growth standpoint. We've been one of the fastest growing states. We've had all of these accolades come our way. I believe there's a direct line back to the 2002 Olympics because of that we're punching well above our weight, and it's because of that Olympic opportunity that we had. It's also a great opportunity for us to invest in the right ways. We did that. Just met with Governor Leavitt, who has his memoirs coming out talking about what they were able to do leading up to the Olympics and the investments that they made in our freeways, infrastructure, transit, all of those things, and having something out there, kind of a goal that we're all working towards, really has a unifying effect on our state and allows us to do some big things. So we're trying to get through this legislative session, get the bid secured, actually sign. Hopefully on July 24th, we'll be in Paris signing on the dotted line. That's what we're looking forward to if everything goes well. And then we can bring everybody together and say, okay, we've got 10 years. What do we want Utah to look like 10 years from now?
We do have some people joining us remotely that I really want to get to.
Yeah.
So if Adam with Fox 13, you can go ahead with your question.
Yes, Governor, we keep finding unreported cases of children being assaulted and sexually assaulted in psychiatric hospitals. One facility in particular has now lost its license 4 times due to patient safety concerns, but it's never been shut down despite calls for that to happen from some lawmakers. Now, some lawmakers are also pointing to the executive branch, which oversees the Department of Health and Human Services. So my question is, are you happy with the state's level of oversight of psychiatric facilities?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. This is something that I'm very concerned about. I believe that you're referring to Highland Ridge. Am I correct on that? Yeah. So this is something that has been brought to my attention, something that we are very concerned about. There is a review happening right there. I believe that there have been some law enforcement investigations there as well. There is a process that we have to go through by law. We will go through that process and execute faithfully on that. I will say that there, something that has changed is that there is a full-time monitor there at the hospital now, and that is something new, so that if there are issues or those complaints come in, we have someone there monitoring full time. And again, if at the end of the process, at the end of the review, then that the evidence weighs in favor of a license revocation or shutting down the facility, we will execute on that as well.
Okay, Adam does have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Adam. Is that all? Okay, we're good. Thank you. Okay. Yep.
Governor, the Colorado River Compact negotiations are going to get underway within the next couple of weeks. Utah and other states will sit down and start hammering out an agreement. What do you want to see out of it on behalf of the state?
Well, I just want to see a fair allocation. I think that's what we're looking for. We've been preparing for this day for several years. We have some of the best legal minds and scientific minds anywhere in the country working on this for us right now. And I'm really pleased, Ben. I want to point this out, that our Colorado River Commission has been working so closely with the upper basin states and lower basin states. We have a better relationship now, far better now than we had 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we were in a very contentious spot, and I felt like Utah was behind in our ability to excel in these negotiations. That has completely changed over the past 3 years. In fact, many of those other states are relying on our experts as we're doing modeling together. And that's the most important thing to me. We know that the hydrology of the river is not what they thought it was going to be 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so there are very hard decisions that will have to be made by everyone. But there is a commitment to make those decisions together and to make the right decisions and to think outside of the box. What are some things we can do? Can we support lower basin states with new technologies so that they're pulling less water from the Colorado, so that we can get our share of the allocation. We know that water has been over allocated, that there is an over usage in the lower basin states versus the upper basin states. We have desalination technology, for example, that is being utilized elsewhere in the world. Could we be supportive and work with the federal government to help California and other places utilize that desalination technology so that their needs are being met as well, and that there's a win-win in this? Those are the types of things that we just really want to be smart about. We want to work together. It's not us versus them. We don't look at this as a zero-sum game. It really is, how can we all work together and find a win? And I think if you were to talk to the other states, they would say the same thing, that they've noticed that Utah is really at the table and well respected and working for solutions.
If this becomes a political battle, can Utah, punch with California, Nevada, Arizona? I mean, are we going to get rolled if this becomes
I don't think we'll get rolled. I certainly hope not. This is the one major basin that has never had a lawsuit, that has never, the allocations here have never been determined by a judge. In fact, it's the only major basin where that's true. We're all pretty proud of that, and we would love to get there again, because again, I think we'll make better decisions than if we're getting rolled, then ultimately a judge makes those decisions. And so I think we can, I really think that there's a path forward where we can get there. But if not, we will do whatever is necessary to protect Utah's rights on that.
At this point, though, do you expect will the states be able to come to some sort of consensus and an agreement, or is the Bureau of Reclamation going to have to make the decision for you?
It's possible that the Bureau will have to step in. I recognize that, but we're still very optimistic that there's an opportunity for us. And again, there are two things there. One is kind of the immediacy of the existing agreements and what's happening in those reservoirs, and then there's the renegotiation that's happening. And those are two separate issues. The good news is right now is that the hydrology of the river has improved. So what we were looking at 2 years ago with the Bureau potentially stepping in and just making decisions has kind of been paused a little bit to allow us to work through this. And with the water year that we had last year and what's shaping up to be a pretty good water year this year, especially with some of the recent storms that were in the southeast portion of the state and surrounding states that will feed directly into the Colorado River and specifically into Lake Powell and Lake Mead, we feel like we're in a little better shape heading into those negotiations than we may have otherwise been.
The Supreme Court has had the case of Utah's trigger law now for more than a year and a half, going on 2 years. In your view, has the Supreme Court had enough time to make a ruling?
Well, I'm not going to put any pressure on that other branch of government. They'll work through their processes, and again, hopefully make the right decision. We'll respect whatever that decision is. It is a very complicated issue, and I know they're doing their very best to work through that.
How badly would you like to see the law take effect?
Well, I would like to. Governor Herbert signed the law, and I supported it. So and so I would, again, I would love to see that law take effect and hope that happens soon.
The UEA has said that they're going to oppose this constitutional amendment in November that would remove the income tax earmark for education. You, I take it, support that amendment. Why do you think that they're wrong and you're right?
Well, I think that this is good for Utah. I think that it's good in that we get to remove the sales tax on food, which is the state portion of the sales tax on food, which is about $200 million. This is a tax that will help people, especially those on the margins who struggle. So I think that that's a very good thing. When it comes to the education piece of this, I always hear that this earmark is sacred and we have to support the earmark. The earmark has never changed one decision by a legislature in our state's history. And so I don't think that it will make any difference. And so we get to remove the sales tax on food. We will continue to fund education. Education funding doesn't happen. The legislature doesn't sit around and say, you know what, gosh, gosh, I want to spend that money somewhere else, but we have that earmark. They've found a way around the earmark every single year that I've been involved in the legislative process, and that will continue. And so this is a great opportunity to get some things in the Constitution that will help us better manage our state and again bless so many lives. So that's why I think it's a good thing, and I think the people of Utah should vote for it, and I hope they will.
Governor, how do you rate the 2024 legislative session on Great Salt Lake legislation and water conservation?
I rate it very high. I give it an A+. I'm so excited. There were some pieces that we didn't quite have done the first 2 years that we were looking at the Great Salt Lake. This kind of finalizes those pieces. It helps us get the excess water when we save water. It gives us a path to get that water to the Great Salt Lake, while still supporting those who own those water rights, who have those water rights. It was I think a very innovative session, and when you add the report that came out, the plan for the Great Salt Lake that came out of the Commissioner's office, Brian Steed's office, I'm incredibly optimistic, and I can tell you, we met this week. We got our report directly with legislative leadership and the Commissioner of the Great Salt Lake. We feel really optimistic about the amount of water heading to the Great Salt Lake this year. We think we're going to see it rise a couple feet, and that's good for Utahns.
Okay, that is all the time we have for our television broadcast. We want to thank you so much for joining us for the Governor's Monthly News Conference. Okay, I would like to introduce Elise. She's a Judge Memorial High School student, and she's here for the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs. Elise, go ahead with your question.
Hey, first of all, thank you for taking the time to write your Substack essay explaining why you signed House Bill 261. My father is a refugee, and when he came to Utah, he didn't have the resources that were available to me through DEI programs, and I believe that these programs would have aided him in his educational journey. In your last news conference, you said that your office will work closely with Utah universities to make sure that as the law is implemented, it will work the way it was intended to, which is to still support students regardless of their background. Can you describe some direct ways that your office is working with the state's universities to continue to support diverse students like myself, as they will have less access to programs directly related to their identities?
Yeah, thanks, Elise. And it's so good to have you here. I got to meet you before, and I'm glad you're here with us today. And by the way, thank you for reading the Substack piece. I think you and like 5 other people read the 5,000 words. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, so we're working directly with the Board of Higher Ed. In fact, they're in their meetings today and tomorrow, and they'll be discussing specifically this. So I'm just getting through the legislative session, so we haven't started our outreach on that bill specifically yet, but we will. I met with the chair of the Board of Higher Ed just yesterday, and made sure that this was on their agenda for today to start talking with our universities about how this is going to be implemented. And again, I want to be very clear, this is not about removing resources that would help students like you. It's about making sure that we have resources to help all students who need that help and that belonging and that success. And that's the whole purpose of this. And so we'll be working closely over the course of the year, looking at the changes that they're making to these programs and making sure that students like yourself and other students who are struggling get the resources that they need moving forward. Thank you.
But this has to take effect within the next 8 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So the wheels have got to be in motion, and the state has to be prepared to respond to it, not just from the university level, K through 12, and also in the state agencies. From the state agency standpoint, what are you seeing? What's being done in your administration?
Yeah. So what the state agencies have done is they've been going through and looking at all of their programs that would be impacted by this bill, and then putting together their plans on how they're going to move forward. So again, over the next few weeks, we'll be reviewing those and giving them input and making sure that we're protecting the rights of all Utahns and giving opportunities to everyone regardless of their race or ethnicity.
Okay, we do have another remote reporter. We have quite a few waiting. So we'll get to Chris Reed with St. George News. Chris, go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Governor. I'm going to get back to troubled teen centers. There's a documentary on Netflix right now that called The Program that's been its top 2 for probably the last 2 weeks or so. And it paints a harsh light on troubled teen centers in Utah specifically, especially in the 3rd episode, and especially those in southern Utah. One, have you seen this documentary? And secondly, what is your response to the documentary's accusation that the state has been letting these centers get away with abusive and criminal treatment of teens?
So, Chris, as I mentioned, there were 591 bills that did not allow me an opportunity to watch that documentary or any others for that matter. So no, I have not. But what I can tell you is that we've passed significant legislation. Senator McKell has been at the forefront of this over the past 2 years, directly dealing with these troubled teen centers and some of the accusations of abuse that are out there. And so I do, again, I'm at a disadvantage not having watched the documentary, but I feel much more confident about the legislation that we have in place now to protect against abuses than I would have 2 years ago.
And turning to one other subject that is going to be coming up for you, I attended a luncheon of here in Washington County, which had the 4 people who say that they are going to they want to replace you as governor in the Republican primary. Their main focus was panning diversity programs to the state. One in particular, Scott Robbins, who's actually second to you in the polling right now, though the polling is early. I'm just going to tell you what he said. He said, quote, "We were lied to, especially the white community, that diversity and multiculturalism includes us. I would like to see everyone get a voice, especially the white community. I would like to replace this anti-white DEI. I want to see a white community be given a voice, just like all those black student unions, BLM." What is your response to that? And what is your thought on diversity programs in respect to your opponent?
Well, I wrote 5,000 words on that, and I would encourage him to read them. So I'll just leave it there. I know we have somebody else online.
We do have Lindsay Ertz with KSL5 TV. Go ahead with your question, Lindsay.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for having us. Okay, so a bill sitting on your desk, obviously, you said you're going to sign the bill that deals with District Attorney Tim Gills' office in Salt Lake City. I'm wondering if you can address the political nature around this, him being a Democrat, your party and the Republicans sort of taking aim at his office. Why should people view this any other way as political?
So I think there are several reasons. This year we have more investments going into to Salt Lake City than at any time in our state's history, and that includes significant investments around homelessness, significant investments around arts and entertainment districts in those areas. We've got the potential for Major League Baseball. We've got the potential for potential National Hockey League expansion. Major re-envisioning of what Salt Lake City and downtown Salt Lake City can look like, and so the state is going to be invested in a way that they've never been invested before. I think there's deep concern about what we've seen with some of the policies impacting homelessness, the crime in parts of the city, and so I think it's fair for them to want to receive information about decisions that are being made and why those decisions are being made, especially if that kind of investment is going to be made at the state level. And so that's my response. I can't speak directly to the to any kind of tit for tat or political back and forth between the legislature and the district attorney's office. I'll let you ask those questions of them. But that's the conversation we had. And again, as we met with council members from the county council who oversee that office and the funding of that office, they also shared concerns that they've been looking for data as well and information. And so I think we can work collaboratively to get the right information and just make sure that we have the right policies in place.
Should the same reporting be required?
And then one other quick question, if I have. In this session, you told me the goal was to veto nothing, right? You like to get involved in the process earlier and really, you said, work to get to yes on some of these bills. Now you're going to be out today with a list of bills that you plan to veto. Why could you not get to yes on some of these bills that could have just been a phone call?
And again, I think that's the point. That if there had been a phone call, then we would have solved this before, and we wouldn't have needed a bill. So that's really it. Look, even on some of these bills that I don't like, that I'll be signing, we instead of vetoing, we reached out, we sat down, we talked through it. Is there still more we could do over the course of the next year? And where those assurances were given, we'll be signing those bills. Robert, I think you had a follow-up. Go ahead.
DA question. You said it's because of the state investment, it's fair to expect some reporting, some information, some data from the office. Should the same data be required from the Attorney General's office, which is exclusively a state office? I mean, why not do both?
Yeah, well, I think we do get that information from the AG's office. And
it's not legally required on a 15-minute increment and
sure,
reporting like
that. And that's something we'll be looking at again. What is the best reporting structure, and how should that come? Again, I don't get to revise bills when they come to my desk to make them broader or include other people. I have to deal with what's just in front of me. And so I think as we move forward, I know there is you'll recall there is an investigation by the legislature that is happening into the Attorney General's office, and I believe that they'll be collecting some of that information as well. That review is ongoing. Course of the year, that's a responsibility that I would take very seriously. Look, I believe elections have consequences, and so just because I disagree or don't like what someone else is doing, that's not grounds for recommending a replacement. That would only be used in the case of corruption or something that is more than just political.
There were several bills passed this year that created new boards that had mostly legislative makeup. I'm thinking of the Fair Park Board, for example, that is primarily legislative makeup. And these are now taking executive functions. Are you concerned at all about, is there a legislative creep into the executive power?
This is something that we've talked about and something that we've pushed back on. I will say I am very happy. We got rid of 50 boards and commissions, which was one of my priorities, and so I appreciate the legislature doing that. We have pushed back, and we got several changes in lots of bills around those kind of boards and commissions. If they were truly just an executive function, then we were able to get most of those removed. If they were advisory, then we allowed most of those to go into effect. These kind of different quasi. This has been an issue for a long time, where we have some of these new entities. They're government entities, but they're separate from the state a little bit. We have these authority boards like that where we have allowed legislative participation in the past, but that's certainly something that we'll be looking at over the course of the next year to see, where do we have legislators functioning in purely executive roles that would apply to my executive role, and if so, we'll be pushing back on those as well.
I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. You think the legislature passes too many bills?
I do.
Why not veto more of them?
Well, I'm going to today.
Well, but overwhelmingly, the chances of a bill becoming law and getting a signature if it passes the legislature are really good. I mean, overwhelmingly, you signed these bills. Why not veto more of them?
Because I work really hard to make those better bills. Right? Look, it's really easy to just say, hey, just flippantly veto bills. Just get rid of a bunch of them. And the minute I do that, nothing I would like to get passed gets passed. Right? And they also, it's much easier to override a veto the more you veto, the more likely you are to get overridden. Right? Because I'll override yours if you'll override mine, and that's how it works. So that doesn't get us anywhere. And I do have a great relationship with the legislature, and there are some very good bills that are passed. What I'm hoping is that we can together work on just being more thoughtful, giving more time to some of these bills that are the most important. And I think there's better ways to do that than just the veto pen.
How many bills do you plan on vetoing?
I don't have that exact number, but there will be several.
And do you think the legislature is going to call a special session to perhaps override any of your decisions?
It's very possible, which is how this works, and that's okay too. I mean, this is the other thing I like to tell people. Like, this really is part of the system. I get to veto, and they get to override, and I don't have my feelings hurt when they override. They shouldn't have their feelings hurt when I veto, although they do often, which I understand because it's a lot of work. It's not easy to get a bill passed. You have to go through the drafting process, then you have hearings, then you have you have to pass it in a committee, and then the House, and then you have to get it over to the other body, the Senate committee, and then the Senate. So it's a long process. You put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it to just have me write 4 letters, and then you have to start all over and convince even more of your colleagues. So I've been there. I've been a legislator. I get it. It's not fun when you have your bill vetoed, and that's why we try really hard not to do it, because again, I think we get better policy when we work together than just sitting on the sidelines and vetoing. And so we are so engaged. I really don't think people understand how hard our team works during the session. We could just sit back, let them do their thing, and then come in and do our thing, but we get better outcomes when we work closely together, and I'm proud of the relationship that we have. I say this sincerely. I think our relationship with our legislature is better than I've ever seen since I've been involved in this, and better than any governor I talk to elsewhere, and I talk to most of them.
Governor, you said there are some bills that you don't like that you'll be signing. What's one of those bills?
I'm not going to tell you which one of those bills are. That kind of defeats the purpose. Again, we had bills that were really important to us that we had to work hard to get done. So an example of that is homelessness, right? When a week before the session ended, when the list of bills that were getting funded came out, we didn't have any funding for homelessness in there. We ended up with over $60 million, which is what we needed to implement our plan over the course of the next year. I'm grateful that the legislature was willing to do that, because they didn't have to. There were people who didn't like what was happening, so they passed a bill that they didn't like to help me get one of my priorities through, which means that sometimes I have to sign some things that I don't love because that's the way this works, but I would never sign something that I thought did harm, lasting harm to Utah. But if I could get it in a place where I could live with it, even though I don't like it, then I go ahead and sign it. I think you'll see that with the IPP bill. This is something that I care about. This is something that I've been working on. These are rural jobs. This is really important to our state. Energy. There were things in that bill I didn't like, and so we've worked really hard to see if we could make a few changes to get it right.
Texas has a law that would allow them to deport people that they suspect are undocumented immigrants. It went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, okay, you can enforce that. Appeals courts now put a hold on it again. Should you, as governor, or should Utah as a state have the ability to deport people that are here without documentation?
Yeah, well, if the federal government's not going to do their job, somebody has to do it. And so that's why I'm very sympathetic to what Texas is trying to accomplish. And again, we'll see how that plays out. It was allowed to go in place by the Supreme Court, then the Court of Appeals held it. And so we'll see how all of that plays out. But this is deeply problematic. We did pass a bill this year that was, again, Utah is not a sanctuary state. We passed another bill to show that we're not a sanctuary state, that requires ICE to communicate with us if they're going to release someone in the state who is undocumented, who is not here legally, and yet we continue to struggle with the federal government, and so it's just put all of us in a very difficult situation. I think I read that there were like 200,000 deportations that were supposed to happen that didn't, because the Biden administration didn't file the appropriate paperwork. I saw that headline. I haven't read the article, so if I'm saying something that's not correct, I apologize. But that's what we're dealing with, a dysfunctional federal government who's not doing their job, and it's putting pressure on all of us. And so regardless of what side of this issue you are on, we need a federal government to do their job. So we'll watch that very closely and see how it plays out. But if we have people in our custody and ICE isn't willing to take them, and to deport them, then I guess the states are going to have to do that.
So Senator Bramble, when he was a fairly new senator, sponsored the Utah Compact, pushed for the Utah Compact. Have we left that behind?
I don't think so. I really don't. And I would encourage people to go back and look at that. In fact, if the Obama administration and the Trump administration had allowed us to actually implement the bill that Senator Bramble ran, this country would look very different. We had a solution for the immigration issues. Obviously, we can't secure the border, although we're trying to help. We've sent troops down there. We've got some highway patrol down there as well, trying to help. But we actually have a solution. So I don't think we're getting away from that, Robert. I really don't. But I do think that because we're not doing the part of that I think is critical to securing the border part of what we were trying to do, then it's putting pressure on everyone. You're seeing Democratic mayors and Democratic governors come out very strongly, becoming almost anti-immigration because of what's happening in their cities, and we're not immune from that here. And so, because of failed policies, it's making it harder for people who want to do the right thing to do that.
We do have a couple more remote reporters that I want to get to. So Anna with Telemundo, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor. Apparently, recently, Alex Branco, a 21-year-old, was shot by two possible suspects, being two teenagers. Also, a boy was arrested for firing a gun across the street from a school in Taylorsville. Is there a problem with firearms in the country where minors have access to it easily? What measures can be taken to prevent this from actually happening?
Thank you. You're kind of cutting in and out, but I think the question was around do we have a problem with firearms in the country? We've answered this question probably 100 times in these back and forth. Yes, we do have a problem. Bad people with guns is a problem. How we solve that with the Second Amendment that I believe in is always a very difficult proposition. We had substantial legislation just this session around protecting students in our high schools. We've been working very closely with law enforcement on ways that we can make sure that we are protecting students in schools, and we'll continue to do that.
Governor, on that note, with those bills that you signed, some people have said they incentivize teachers to carry guns and are concerned that actually makes students less safe in schools. How would you respond to people that are worried about the implications of those bills?
Well, again, there's very specific measures in place around training and security, making sure that any weapon would be secured, and we certainly hope that it will have a deterrent effect, and that's the reason behind the legislation.
Governor, we saw a lot of technological and organizational issues with the Republican Party caucuses on Super Tuesday, which made Utah the last state to report results out of all of the states that were voting on Super Tuesday. So how do you think that process went, and do you support using the caucus system in future elections?
Well, I had a great caucus, so mine went very well. So I don't have any complaints. I know there were some because of high turnout and some technology issues in some areas. Obviously, I think we all would have liked to have gotten those results sooner. Not that they were ever in doubt. I don't think as far as the ultimate results were concerned. I think there were lessons learned. I've had great conversations with the chair of the Republican Party and the work that was done. Again, most places went off without a hitch, but there were some high-profile ones that did not. And so I think that there were lessons learned. I've always been supportive of the caucus convention system, and I think that it's great to get people together in their neighborhoods to have these conversations. I think high turnout is good, although turnout was lower, I think, than it's been in the past. Part of that was because there really wasn't much in doubt. I think if it had been a truly contested election with multiple candidates, or where the ultimate result was unknown, we would have seen higher turnout. But I think those lessons have been learned, and there will be improvements made. Ultimately, whether we have a traditional primary or for a caucus. I don't have the strongest feelings. I know that disappoints people that I don't have terribly strong feelings on this, because I know some do, but I think there are pros and cons to both.
If I could ask another political question. Since you have these challengers, most of them more conservative from you, criticizing you from the right, does that change the way you govern or the way you communicate?
Well, I hope not. I don't think so, but I'll let ultimately you all can be the judge of that. Look, I'm a very conservative governor. I always have been, and I think if you look at my record, I stand on our record. We've cut taxes more than any governor in our state's history. We've passed constitutional carry, something that I was very proud to sign. Did that my very first session as a governor. We've worked very closely on conservative issues that I think make Utah better. We're the best state for business. I think the results speak for themselves, and so I'm grateful for what we've done for teachers. We've got the largest raises in our state's history for our teachers. So look, it is the political season, and certainly we see that with legislators who are up for re-election this year. Anyone who's an observer of the legislative session will tell you that election years are a little different than non-election years, and that's certainly the case. But that's part of it. Abraham Lincoln said that any problem we have in this country can be fixed in the next election, and that's why we have elections. And so we do speak to voters, and I think we're doing very well. I think if you look at the polling, we're doing very well. And so I'm still speaking out on things I believe in, though. I speak often about depolarization and how important it is, even if that's not very popular. There are those in my party that don't like me talking about that. They think that that's weak or soft. I disagree. I think it's courageous. I think it's hard. I think it's the thing that we should be most concerned about. I think our country is being torn apart because we are too polarized. I try not to be that way. Sometimes I mess up. I've apologized for that in the past when I've said things, used rhetoric that I'm not proud of, and so I'll continue to do that. But I think if you look at what I did in year 1, year 2, and year 3, and match it up with what I've done in year 4, you wouldn't see that much of a difference.
There are anecdotes of people who are leaving the state because of the high cost of living. Do you see a trend toward outmigration?
So there are certainly different trends that happen. We've always had in-migration and out-migration. We're not the fastest growing state in the country anymore, and that is because of the cost of living. And there's no question about that. I'm deeply worried about the cost of housing. I've said that many times. I think we're 7th or 8th now in the country when it comes to the actual cost of price of housing, the median price of housing. No, we're not 3rd when it comes to the price of housing. That's
in terms of the affordability.
We're 3rd in that study if you show the individual income versus the median price of housing, which is different. If you look at family income, because we have larger families, we're not 3rd. We fall down. But again, you can find stats. It's not good. It's not good. Whether we're 7th, 8th, 3rd, whatever, it's not good. Which is why I've been so passionate about building starter homes again. Look, I know what it's like, you guys. I know what it's like to live in a place where you have to leave. Because you can't afford to live there. Because that's what my brothers and sisters did. That's what all of my friends in high school had to do. Most of them had to leave, not because the price of housing was too high, but because they didn't have it. There were no jobs, right? Doesn't matter. Either you don't have a job, or you have a job but you can't buy a house. Both of those make you leave, and it's not great. It's not what we should be focused on. And so this is why we're trying to change that. I absolutely believe that if we can do this and get it right, and I worry that maybe it was a little complicated and so it didn't get enough attention, but what we did this legislative session is bigger than anything that's been done anywhere in the country when it comes to the possibility of building starter homes and attainable housing. We have over $300 million now available for builders to get construction loans, working through banks. They can get construction loans at much lower rates than they would be able to get otherwise. Here's what's happened, and I'm sorry, I'm going to dive into the weeds because I think it's so important. When we had those banks fail a year ago that were struggling, the lending was tightened down, and so it made it very difficult for construction loans to even get construction loans. If you can get a construction loan, it's at a much higher rate. So people who were building homes at 3% or 4% are now getting loans at 8 or 10% or higher, some at 15, 16%. Some can't even get loans, developers, to build these homes, right? So what we're trying to do now, and we've been told by many developers, look, if we're tying this to, they have to be starter homes. So 60% of the homes they build in their project have to be under $350,000. That's our target. We want to get it lower than that, but that's where we're targeting right now, which is about $100,000 below the median price of a house right now in Utah. We're being told that they will build these, that we will start to see hundreds, thousands of these starter homes now, which will then lower the price of everything if we can get this right over the course of the next 5 years. And this is significant, much more than I was even hoping for when we started. There are other changes as well. These homes, cities can put restrictions on these homes so they can't be resold as secondary rentals. They can't be resold to corporate investors so that they stay in the market as starter homes. And this is it. This is how we change this. It's the only way to do it. We have to have more supply. And sorry for the rant, Brian, but this is really, really important to me.
So the loan, just point of clarification, would the loan be reduced to what level?
So we're hoping, again, 3 to 5% for the developer. Now they build the homes, and then but they have to build them again. These are smaller homes. These are starter homes. Most of us grew up in a 1,500 square foot home or smaller. That's what we're talking about. We stopped building these, by the way, about 15 years ago. They almost no one builds these now. But to get this loan, they'll have to build these again, and they're committed to doing it because they can't get money anywhere else. What happened was, it's interesting. We need to build about 27,000 homes a year total to just keep up with kind of the regular demand. We after 2008, when the market collapsed, we stopped doing that, and then we started building up, and we got up there. We started doing it again, and then COVID hit, and then interest rates went up, and we fell off again. So we're actually falling behind now. We're already behind, and now we're falling further behind. So we've got to really get developers building again, and again, the League of Cities and Towns tells us they have about 190,000 lots that that could be built on right now, that are papered lots. They're permitted, but they don't have the infrastructure, or they can't get a loan to build on them. So that's what we're trying to do, and forcing the cities and towns to allow for smaller lots so that we can get more of these houses. All of that works together, and we think we can land this.
We are out of time. Sorry to interrupt. Do you have any final thoughts as we wrap the legislative session?
I must say it's great to have Robert Gerke back with us. I'll just give him a shout out. It's been a while, so we'd like to do that. Just it is March Madness today. I'm surprised any of you are here. BYU kicked off about 20 minutes ago. I don't have an update yet, but I hope they're doing well. And good luck to my Aggies and the Lady Utes. It's a fun time of year. I hope everybody enjoys it. Great weather. We've got more water, more snow, more rain coming, which is good for all of us. So thanks, everybody.